Hello, welcome to A Moment's Notice. I am your host, Kirk Hill Jr. If this is your first time watching, this podcast is a podcast for safe spaces and just being your authentic self. If you are returning, hey, welcome again. This is my first episode in a while. I've been focusing more on me doing the short form podcast, 10 minutes or less. And I've been having a lot of fun on 10 minutes or less. But I did that last episode reacting to the Michael movie. And as a Michael Jackson fan, lifelong Michael Jackson fan, there was no way that I could do that and only do 10 minutes. I have more to say. I have more to talk about. And I kind of want to geek out a little more about it, and be critical, but I had a wonderful time in in the movie theater, seeing it, and I just wanted to talk more about it here. So that's that. In regards to my previous episode, I know I said that I was going to put a link in the description or in the comments, but the play actually had gotten indefinitely postponed. I have yet to do a performance. I'm not sure if we will still do a performance, because in February there was a really bad blizzard, and the show had gotten postponed because of primarily we were performing for schools, and schools could not travel to the theater for the show. So, it just didn't end up working out. But I do not, I have no regrets about the rehearsal process and all of that. Everything still stands. I love all the people that I rehearsed with, and I would love to do something else with them down the line in the future. Don't know what or when or how, but and I keep in touch with some of them, or I see I see the things that they do on Instagram and stuff like that. So it's been really cool, and I miss them a lot. And yeah, it's unfortunate that we weren't able to act in that show. I was doing a lot of preparing for the show. I still remember my lines for the show, but things happen the way they happen. But I've been doing other things. I've been working. I'm about to start playing basketball again with my god brothers, so that's cool. I have another show about to go to with the Manhattans, and I'm looking forward to that. And yes. Also, I do still plan for this podcast to become more conversational, have guests on and stuff like that. But I just, like I said, I needed a moment, an extra moment, honestly, to talk about the movie. So right from the beginning, spoilers, for anybody who hasn't seen it, obviously I'm talking about the movie. So I'm going with the impression that you've seen it. So if you haven't seen it, don't watch this video. You can watch the other one on 10 minutes or less. That one is a lot shorter. It's not as specific. I'm going to get really specific with certain things here. So this is your final warning. Bang, bang, bang. All right. I love that from the beginning of the movie, you're already hearing Michael's voice. You're already hearing the concert. The wanna be starting something music starts, and you're just hearing it over the credits, and you just hear Michael's voice. Said you want to be starting something, you got to be starting something, and it's like the movie is pulling you in to the concert experience immediately, and that is the power of Michael Jackson. That, like, you're just automatically there, and it hooks you in. You're just like, yes, let's get it, and it's a great way to hook the audience in. And I was hoping that they like show him performing it, but it actually cuts into like him about to go on stage, and then it goes, back in time to the Jackson 5 years and stuff. So it's like, oh man, I want to see the concert, and then it just takes you back. But like I said, hooked me in because now I'm like, all right, down to watch the story. And the Jackson 5 scenes, I think, really do set the groundwork for the important relationships in his life, primarily the relationship with his mom and his dad. You see where he goes to his mother for support and for comfort, and his father drills in him the fear, but also the importance of perfectionism, and Coleman Domingo definitely does a great job as Joseph from the beginning, and it's funny because you grow up watching the Jacksons in American Dream, and you're like, man, I wonder if he's gonna do as good as my other guy, Lawrence Hilton Jacobs. Phenomenal performance as Joseph Jackson in that miniseries, and Coleman Domingo makes the performance his own. There's no imitation of other things. He uses a different voice, a different cadence of speaking, but it still feels very much like a Joe Jackson. He's intimidating right from the start, but it immediately shows also, and that's the cool part about this movie, the dichotomy of like, sometimes the people who shape you the most they shape you for the better, but they also shape you a little bit for the worse, like at the same time, because there's pressure, there's anxiety, there's trauma, but that repetitiveness of like, you can either be a winner in this life or a loser. And then when they're rehearsing and he's like, Michael, look forward, look at me, that be there with the audience, like you're the point man. He's right, and his method of getting them there is obviously rough. It's obviously questionable. Like, these are children, these are his children, so to treat them harsh and to whip them into shape and to make fun of his son's nose, all of that is not it's not healthy. But also that drive of like, there's a certain life that I live in a certain environment that I have to be around that I do not want for any of y'all. I want my boys to have a better life. I want my boys to be successful, and this is the way to get there. And the only way to achieve things in this life is to be diligent and work hard and be perfect. Again, the method isn't there, but like that feeling of like, I want better for my children. I want them to have something more than what I had. I want them to achieve more than what I was able to achieve in my life. And yes, you could also see it as him trying to live through them, but just that first little scene, you see the building blocks of all the things that made Michael Jackson who he was and shaped his way of thinking, especially when it comes to music and that constant search for perfection. It's all right there in the beginning of the movie, and I thought that was cool. Now, it helps for me because I've already known all this. One, if you watch the miniseries, and two, just as a fan learning about him over the years. And that was the part of like, there were things in the movie that for new fans or casual fans who don't really know like the backstory of his life, these are like new revelations for them. My nephew was with me. He just recently got into Michael Jackson music, so there were songs that were playing. He didn't even know the name of the songs. So while we're watching a movie, he's like, "Uncle, what song is that?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, man, this," and it was cool to like be next to somebody discovering the genius of Michael Jackson in real time. And there was not one song in that movie that my nephew did not like. He was just like, "I want to listen to that. I want to listen to that. Uncle, can you teach me how to do the moonwalk?" And like it was just so genuine and so real. And it kind of took me back to when I was his age. Because when I was his age, I had history on film, volume 2. I had the VHS. I was watching the music videos like back to back to back. I wore that tape out and I was just constantly like studying this man. So to see my nephew doing that and being like really, really interested and drawn into his story and asking me questions during the movie, it was really, really cool. And my son was on the other side of me watching and he was just locked in. He got a little tired at the end, but it was cool that he was just like, "Oh yeah." And then when the movie started, see, my son knows when to be starting something. So when the movie started, me and him was jamming out right from the beginning of the movie. That was a really cool moment for me. But because I know more about the story, there's a lot of things that are not shown in the film that I know about. And that kind of took me out of it because I'm like, well, where's this? Where's that? And again, that's when you understand like how films work, how a movie works, how legal aspects of things work. Like as a film, there's no way to put in everything because one, the movie would be too long, and two, when you're portraying real people and people who are still alive, there's not as much room for a dramatic license, and there's not as much room. People don't want certain things to be revealed or exposed or whatever. So, people are private about their lives, private about their past. But I know from research that the Jackson family is very flawed. There's a lot of things with the brothers, with the sisters, with Michael himself. There's a lot of things that this movie could have touched on, and it chose not to. And from a filmmaking standpoint, from a business standpoint, I get it because it makes sense because you want to focus on the hit points so that one, people can celebrate Michael, and that's admirable. I get that. And also so that the film can make money. The film is only a little over 2 hours, and I was like, could at least did 2.5. I just feel like there was room to get a little deeper. And even if you wanted to and this is what I was alluding to in on the other podcast, like even if you had to change the story around, right, and focus more on his relationship with his father and his journey to find himself as a solo artist, I feel like you have to really start from the real building blocks of that. You have to go back to when they were in the Jacksons and he started writing songs on his own for the first time. Like, Blues Away is like the first song he ever wrote on the first Jacksons album. A lot of people don't know that, but that's like the first song he ever wrote. I feel like you could have talked about that process, or, they didn't touch on him doing The Wiz. But now I realize the reason why they didn't do that is because the Diana Ross scenes were cut. I don't know what version of Diana Ross was cut. I don't know if it's like when she first met Michael as a kid or if it was their time on the set of The Wiz. I don't really know. But the actress who was cast as Diana Ross revealed that all of her scenes were cut from the movie. And again, there's a lot of like historical inaccuracies, like the fact that they're performing Never Can Say Goodbye at a concert, even though it was before they were signed to Motown. So that doesn't make sense because Never Can Say Goodbye is a Motown song. Like, again, as a person who knows these things, you watch and you're like, that's not right. That don't make sense. And then the fact that Randy and Janet are just completely absent from the movie, crazy. You can explain away the Reby thing. Reby was the oldest child. She was married. She probably moved out by a certain point. Like, if Reby's not in a lot of scenes, fine. But like Janet and Randy, it's a little more glaring. So obviously there's certain things that they couldn't touch on because there's certain things that Janet was definitely there for, certain things that Randy was definitely there for. That doesn't make sense. Because even jumping around a little bit, but even at the end when they do the victory tour scenes, I remember when I saw the trailer for it and I saw that there was only 5 brothers on the stage. I was like, oh, are they being like super accurate for the fact that like Jackie was hurt for a long time with the victory tour, so Jackie wasn't actually there? But then you come to find out, no, it's just the Jackson 5 grown up, and Randy is completely absent from that entire sequence. And I'm just like, it's a little inaccurate. Took me out of the movie a little bit, just because I'm big on these things. Because again, as a person who just was a super big fan of Michael Jackson, there's a lot of things that I would want to see recreated, and that was not. This just was not the case for this movie. For better or worse. I mean, the movie's a hit. It's making a lot of money. Of course, it's going to make a lot of money, which means the sequel is almost absolutely going to happen, which I can't wait for. But again, for the story that they were trying to tell initially, I feel like you could have went a little deeper. I felt they could have touched more on Michael's relationship with Berry Gordy and how that changed, seeing him as a father figure and then leaving Motown. Could have touched on that. With Quincy Jones, as far as like his influence on him and how that shaped the creation of Off the Wall. Because Thriller is Thriller. Everybody knows that Thriller is like this phenomenal album, best-selling album of all time. And again, for the sake of like hitting the hits, yeah, people want to see all that stuff, like the Thriller video recreated, the Billie Jean performance recreated, which I personally felt they could have done a lot better on both of those scenes. Not a criticism of Jafar, but just as of the way they were depicted. I feel like they could have did it a little bit better, especially with the Billie Jean performance. But this is all stuff that everybody has already seen, so I get why they might have brushed through it a little bit. But the movie feels rushed in that way, where it's like it's just this, and you're not really feeling the full weight of like what this means to Michael to make these things. That's why I said the Beat It rehearsal is like my favorite of those scenes, because you also see the backstory of what led him to create that moment in Beat It. And it's like, you feel that like, oh man, like these people are fighting each other, killing each other. Like, this is wrong. I don't like that. What can I do to like help fix that situation? That's Michael Jackson. That's a human part of Michael Jackson that we don't feel. But this story of like growing into the genius that you are, growing into this album, you have to start with how it really came about. And I felt like that didn't really happen. It just kind of jumped into Off the Wall. You show him recording Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, and then all of a sudden the album's out. And it's like, oh, it was cool. But then they dub all that and they're like, all right, well, Michael, you got to go on tour with your brothers again. And they made it seem like making Thriller was a way to really get free of his brothers. But really, Off the Wall was the first step in that. And the freedom of creating Off the Wall, I felt like that needed more time. His relationship with Quincy Jones, the way Quincy Jones shaped that album, the way he fought to have Quincy Jones as his producer, I feel like that needed more time, because that's like an essential relationship in his life, especially from a male perspective. Because if you're not bonding with your own father and you're finding a new, not necessarily father figure, but like a male mentor in your life to help you create the sound that you're looking for, that deserves more screen time. It deserves more attention, and it did not really get that. And then I was hoping that it would touch on the fact that Off the Wall wasn't nominated for certain Grammys, and that is what motivated him to be like, Thriller needs to be the best album of all time, because Off the Wall was meant to be this big moment for him, and it wasn't. So now he's like, now I have to do even more to prove that this is really I'm the best. And I didn't really get that for real. It kind of touches on it a bit, but it doesn't really go there. And I just wanted more of that. I just did in a story, there are certain things, certain relationships, and certain key moments that drive a person to be who they are. And all of that could have reflected back again to his father. It's still connected to that search for perfection, right? And it could have went there, and it just didn't. But I want to be a little more positive now. The one scene, well, not one, but the few scenes that really hit me, I think, were his scenes after he was burned, all the visits to the hospital, when he was getting toys at the store, and all the people were coming up to him, and he was signing everybody's autographs, like no problem. He was cool with it. I feel like those moments are real human moments. When he wanted to play Twister with his brothers, and they're like, man, we're not doing that. Like, we got other things to do. And Michael's like, you guys are no fun anymore. Like that felt like a real candid moment that none of us would have ever thought of happening, but it speaks to the innocence in his heart, and the flashbacks, or the recurring theme of like Peter Pan and him reading the book when he was a kid, reading the same book as an adult, reading it to Bubbles, and then like his relationship with animals, and all of that, like showing that he was different. He viewed the world differently. And you gotta think that, Michael was the youngest of the 5. So when you really look at it, like Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, they all had a certain sense of childhood. They all had their time to like kind of be who they were going to be, or who they wanted to be, without that pressure, especially the first 3. Marlon and Michael are very close in age, so I don't really know the difference in adjustment between Marlon and Michael. But again, there was a pressure on Michael that was never really on Marlon, because Michael was the point. And that causes people to grow up in different ways. It causes 2 different paths of life, and Michael was always meant to be on a different path, simply because of his talent, simply because of him being the youngest, and simply just because of because he wanted to be great. For him to be like 5-6 years old, studying James Brown, studying Jackie Wilson, it's just certain people it just clicks. That's why even with Joe's pushing, it's like Michael had his own drive anyway to be great. So all of that combined just turned him into this like really focused genius. But when you're like that, when you're so tunnel vision on that, but you also lack like the childhood, you lack the genuine friendships that you need when you're growing up, it shapes you into a different kind of person. And Michael was just always going to be unique. And I hope that the sequel can build on that more, because he was kind of destined for isolation. And I think as he got older and as the world started picking at him and finding ways to tear him down, that isolation you feel more and more and more. And as I've gotten older, and when I look back, watching the movie after coming out of the theater, it made me think of Michael's life in totality and all of the things that made him and all of the things that broke him, really. And, you know, it's wild. People, when you look at Michael Jackson's life, you think, oh man, this guy was like great his entire life, and was so talented from like 5 years old, and lived a crazy life and did so many things, and but then when you really learn about like everything, he had a rough childhood. He didn't like when his brothers got married. He was constantly, chased down by fans. He hurt his nose and then got the surgeries and was striving to fix that look again. Trauma. He had vitiligo. A lot of people didn't know that. I didn't know that until until I got older. And everybody was talking about, his skin, how he didn't want to be black. He didn't want to look like this. And the whole world was convinced of that. And there might have been a little bit of that in there, but he genuinely had a skin disease. And like, people just kind of brushed that off, and he tried to hide it as best as he could, being the perfectionist that he was. Now this is like an imperfection on your body. And for you to be Michael Jackson, I cannot afford to have an imperfection on my body. So I have to do something about it as best as I can. And, so you deal with that. You deal with the disappointment of Off the Wall, not getting Grammys. You're dealing with trying to break free from your father. And then when you're older, you're dealing with the allegations. You're dealing with, yes, he made certain decisions that I don't agree with to this day, but it's like, a lot of it is just him being misunderstood. But you have, the first allegations, then you have the second trial 10 years later, and then you have Sony messing up your promotion for your album. You have people coming at you for your skin, coming at you for your nose. All those years, the Wacko Jacko stuff. And you realize that moment of time in Thriller, that little brief moment from like Motown 25 to the Grammys and all of that, that's really the only time that he was like really like at peace with himself. At least that's how the movie made it seem. Like, that's the only time where he was really like, I am doing what I'm meant to do. I am having the impact that I'm meant to have, and I'm on top of the world. It's really only that little stretch of time. All the other times in his life, as great as they were, as talented as he was throughout his entire life, all those other times were marred and surrounded by like bad things. Immediately after that, he does the commercial for his family, burns his head. He does the victory tour for his family. Don King is doing some shady stuff, and his father's trying to control him. He's not feeling it. He breaks away from his brothers. Then bad happens. Skin's changing again. Got another surgery. People are criticizing that. And you realize that moment of being perfect really only lasted for that one stretch of time, and he spent the rest of his life searching for that same level of perfection. And the worst thing that a perfectionist can do is achieve perfection, because then once you get it, you're trying to replicate it always, and you never will, because that moment is that moment. And it reminds me a lot of Walt Disney. I remember when I was researching him a couple of years ago, and I was watching the documentary. I think it was around the time Cinderella came out. He gave an interview with somebody, and he's like, I had to reconcile with the fact that like I will never do another Snow White. Like Snow White was just that moment. Yeah, there's Mickey Mouse. Yeah, there's Pinocchio. Yeah, there's Fantasia. Yeah, there's Disneyland and all that other stuff. Like he did a lot in his life. But that one moment where like everything was great and it was just like there is no denying that this man is a genius is when he made Snow White. He never reached that moment. You can never recreate that moment. And most people go their whole lives never reaching that moment. Most people go their lives never finding their thriller, never finding their Snow White. So to be a person that does achieve it, where do you go from there? And that can drive a person crazy. That can really stress a person out. On top of all of the criticism that you're receiving from the rest of the whole world, like that's a lot of weight to carry. So I sympathize with people like that. When you are forced to uphold a certain image of yourself, it is not an easy path. And I commend people who push through amongst all of that pressure. Sometimes that's why I look at myself and I'm like, maybe it's a good thing I never made it and got like super, super famous, because I'm a super anxious person. I don't know how I would have dealt with it. I can barely deal with the criticisms that I get now. The few things that people find wrong with me, I'm like, man, like how can I fix it? How can I get better at that? I search for my own little version of perfection in my life. So imagine that 10, 100 times over when you're a person like Michael Jackson or Walt Disney or anybody, or Michael Jordan or LeBron James or anything like that. Like it's insane, so it's a tough path to walk. And I think this movie did a great job of building the blocks of showing that, but also celebrating like the genius of Michael Jackson and loving the music. So in terms of that, it did its job. That's why I gave the movie a 7 out of 10, because Jafar really does become his uncle, and the music is great, and recreating certain moments in life was cool. I just hope that the second movie allows for a time to get deeper. And I know a lot of people say like, I don't want to see the darker moments in his life, but that is life. Life is not a highlight reel. Life has ups and downs, and you need to see that. And to know that a person like Michael Jackson had those moments, it makes him more of a real person. That is why I like biopics that go there, because it makes it feel like we're really watching moments in this person's life. That's why, to me, the gold standard out of the music biopics that I've seen, the gold standard for me is Ray, because one, Jamie Foxx, became Ray Charles. I watched that movie and I never see Jamie Foxx. I see Ray Charles. The only time that he looks like Jamie Foxx is when he has that vision near the end of the movie and takes his shades off. That's the only time he looks like Jamie Foxx. Other than that, he is Ray from start to finish. And the movie does not shy away from the fact that like Ray was very flawed. Ray was on drugs. Ray cheated on his wife. Like there was things that were going on that you just can't shy away from, and it made for a deeper story. And I feel like you gotta go there with Michael too. You gotta go there with the addiction to painkillers. You gotta go there with like the failed marriages. You gotta go there with like his relationships with his children. As the movie moves forward, even the later albums, like that response to the criticisms of him and how angry he was, like you gotta go there. You gotta show that, because the whole movie can't just be like, oh, I want to see this music video again, I want to see that music video again. That's not really a story. It's just a highlight reel, and I just want more of a story. So that is it. All that to say, I really love the movie. Like I said, I just needed time to talk more about those parts of it. But I had a great time. My family had a great time, and I can't wait for the sequel. So that being said, I'm about to wrap up this episode. Thank you for listening. Here is my one good thing. My one good thing so far this week has been I talked to my friends at work, and they are down to join my basketball team with my friends, and we've all been conversing with each other in the group chat with my god brother, and we're trying to set up a time to practice for our first game. I will not make the first game because I am going to Dominica. You know, I learned that's how you actually pronounce it. It's not Dominica, it's Dominica. It's pretty cool, and I can't wait. That's gonna be a fun performance. My first time like really outside of the country for a performance, and like being on this island, and it's part of this jazz and Creole festival. I'm very excited about it. It should be fun. I hope everything goes well. Being on a plane with my wife is always fun. So we be chilling. Yeah, that's my one good thing. And to that, I say again, thank you for being here. Hopefully it's not as long until our next moment, but I really want to get this thing right, and I want to have the right guests on. I'm planning on setting everything up so that we can start having these conversations, because I do miss this podcast. I do miss doing the longer episodes, but I just don't want to do everything by myself. I want to grow this into something more. So hopefully we'll get that. Thank you, and we'll be back at a moment's notice.